Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am super excited about today's video. Today I will be talking about where we have gotten certain architecture and designs from, all the way from the ancient Egypt to the 18th century Rococo. I think that there are so many things around us that we don't even think about is actually from an era taking place a long time ago. But even to this day, we bring it into our lives, both in residential homes and out in the public. I was thinking that I'll speak a little bit about each era and what architecture and design that was common back then and still is today. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Let's jump right into it, guys. So the very first era I wanted to mention is the ancient Egypt. This era took place about 3500 BC to 340 BC. Architecture and design from this area that we can thank the Egyptians for is the foldable safari chair. This right here is a more modern style of the safari chair. This is the Rococo chair made by Arne Norell from 1964. The next furniture we can thank the Egyptians for is the stool without a backrest. Here you have an Egyptian stool from that era. An interior detail and shape that was invented during this time and that we see today in our home is the obelisk shape. This shape can also be seen in architecture, like the Washington Monument, for example. And last but not least, that we should thank the Egyptians for is ceramic in all its shapes and forms. Here we have an example of a pottery from that era. And today we can make ceramic look very modern in comparison to the old Egyptian version. Let's move on to the ancient Greece. This era took place about 1100 BC to 146 BC. Architecture and design from this era that we can thank the Greeks for is the famous column. The three most famous columns is the Doric column, the Ionic column, and the last and third one is the Corinthian column. The Doric column you can see on so many architectural buildings around the world. One famous building having the Doric column is the Lincoln Memorial. The Ionic column can be seen on the Pushkin Museum in Moscow. The Corinthian column can be seen at the New York Stock Exchange and the Austrian Parliament building. During this era, vases for different purposes and vase paintings was created and used frequently. One of the most common vases was the amphora. This is the vase that has two handles and was used for wine, oil, etc. The cup Silix also came from this era and had two handles as well. A famous chair that was also returned later during the Napoleon era was the Christmas chair, with its characterized strongly curved legs. And let's not forget about the bust statues, a very common decor in our homes today. Some patterns that were invented during the ancient Greek era was the meander Greek key. This pattern can be found on both buildings, but also as a pattern on fabric and items as well. Lots to thank the ancient Greeks for. The next era I wanted to talk about is the Roman Empire that took place around 146 BC to 476 AD. During this era, you can tell that they have taken a lot from both the ancient Egypt and Greek with them, but they also invented new things. Here are some of those things. The Etruscan architecture was invented. This architecture was similar to the Greek, with use of stone and marble, but with the difference that usage of wood and terracotta was also added. Roman baths, arches, and domes were also built by the Romans. The famous building Colosseum was built during this era, and here you can definitely see the arches in plenty. The curule chair was invented during the Roman Empire and will influence future eras ahead. Marble and complex mosaic pattern floor was also invented and used frequently during this time. The next era to mention is the Byzantine Empire, that took place around 330 AD to 1453 AD. In this era, East meets West, and the Byzantine Empire is defined as splendor and prosperity. This empire was a mixture of Greek and Roman style with Eastern influences. That's why the architecture that was invented during this era was the Oriental and the Romanesque architecture. The famous Hagia Sophia Church in Istanbul is from this era, and inside of the church, you definitely get the mixture of East meeting West. Mosaic was used very heavily during this era, and the color blue and gold was very popular as well. Here is one famous example of mosaic from that time, the Christ Pantocrator, that is found inside of the Hagia Sophia Church. What a masterpiece! The next era on the list is the Renaissance Italy, that took place from 1420 to 1530. I want to point out that the Renaissance started off in Italy, but spread to France, England, Austria, and Spain later on. During this era, the people that lived during this time started to understand the proportions of the human body. This can be seen in both the buildings and houses, where they were relating to the human proportions in a better way compared to in the past eras. It was also seen in art, where both Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, to mention a few artists during this time, that were understanding the human and its proportions. Here come some things invented during the Renaissance era. The cassone, which was a chest that was brought into people's homes. Caryatids, which was widely used during the ancient Greek, was during the Renaissance used as bones for their tables. The scabello chair was invented, and it definitely had more details compared to previous eras. Bronze, wood, marble, and stone was also heavily used during this time. On to the next era, which is the Baroque, that took place from 1580 to 1750. This style was considered dissuasive, theatrical, exaggerated, and artificial. It was believed that the Baroque style was lacking in comparison to the Renaissance style, which was well-balanced and harmonious. The Baroque would be described as an over-decorated style with lots of ornaments, gold, and richly carved furniture. This is one picture that I actually took myself. It's from Läckö Castle in Sweden. Connected to the castle, they had a miniature-sized church that had a Baroque style. I still remember when I first entered this church, how heavy and dark it felt in there. It definitely felt over-decorated, filled with ornaments, and it had a theatrical feel to it. I just wanted to show you these pictures since I had them on hand. Let's go over some things that was heavily used during this time. During this time, you would see walls and ceilings being painted with myths and legends. Furniture was massive, ornate, and was transformed into a work of art. A common piece of furniture was the hamburger cabinet from Hamburg, Germany. During the late Baroque, the swelling of the style decreases somewhat when the style changes into the late Baroque. During the end stage of the Baroque, all the twists and turns are straightened out a bit, and you get a lot of inspiration from China. The furniture that you see here is from the Chinois series. Let's move on to the last and final era of this video, which is the Rococo from the 18th century. The style originated from France and came as a reaction to the weight and stiffness of the Baroque. Instead, here they wanted to be playful and free. During the Rococo period, people began to think more and more about comfort, and the philosophy was that the architectural environment would encourage a certain way of life and reflect the values of that time. The style was more feminine and softer in its appearance compared to the Baroque, and you would see more soft organic shapes, flowers, and bird motifs as well as light and curvy chairs with asymmetrical organic design. The decorative mussel, the rose, or the breaking wave was used as decoration on furniture and in architecture. Cherubim, which is an angel-like statue, were very common, as well as a lot of pastel color usage. A lot of gold, chandeliers, and mirrors was also heavily used. Famous buildings within the Rococo era are the Versailles Palace in France and the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, Russia. Alright guys, that finalizes all the eras that I wanted to cover. I really enjoy preparing this video because I'm realizing how long some of these furniture and items have been existing for, and it also is an eye-opening experience to see the gradual change and development there has been in both architecture and design. I really hope you enjoyed this video just as much as I did. It is hard for me to pick a favorite out of all the ones I mentioned, but if I have to pick one, it will have to be Rococo, and the main reason for that is my weakness for gold. I'd love to know which area is your favorite, so just write me below in the description box. I appreciate you all so much for watching as always. I love you guys. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.